This one says, investing in real estate feels like the worst mistake I've ever made. I own 2 rental properties and a tenant recently defaulted on the only one that made any profit. Now we must evict him. My other rental barely breaks even on the mortgage, but with repairs and other expenses, I'm coming in at a loss. I regret not just investing my money in the stock market. Mutual funds don't suddenly need $50K for a new roof or call you at 3 a.m. to tell you the toilet is packed up. At this point, I'm struggling to get by each month.
This is probably one of the biggest arguments for why people say like,
yes,
the hassle factor with real estate is just not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, like this person said, like you invest all your money in the stock market. Like there's no hassle. If you need access to those funds, you can sell off a portion as you need to. And yeah, there's going to be tax implications. Yeah, the market might be down, whatever it is, you can still access that money. If you have that money tied up in real estate, to get that money out, you're going to have to do, assuming you have equity in there, then maybe you could do a HELOC, but like that's, now you're just borrowing against the house, right? Like your money's pretty tied up there. I feel like this is probably one of the best examples I've seen for why, like what makes investing in the stock market like heavily as your primary source of wealth building, what makes that so attractive?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're just like, I don't know why it's been like so broadly out there, like that just rental real estate is the way to go to make passive income, because this is like not passive at all. Even if you're having a property manager, like there's still a lot of things that, those are your properties, right? I feel like in this day and age, like it's just like, so, all these different classes you can take that, to get into rental real estate. But I think the people that get into it, like often don't even have their regular finances under control. And then they're getting these huge assets and then they're just like leveraging them. And it's like, I don't know. I just feel like they're just not financially stable enough to have something like that. They don't even have like an emergency fund. And then we're having rental real estate. It makes no sense. So I don't know. I think in this situation, like for me, if I was in this situation, I'd probably just like cut my losses and sell these properties, because if this and see what you get out of it, like especially in today's market, you might actually be up. But like I'm not dealing with this anymore. This is why personally I don't want rental real estate, because I'm not dealing with stuff like this. It's not super passive, and I've heard this, Nick. I've heard this from so many people that do have properties that they're renting out. Either they have a bad tenant, they have to like evict, or the tenant isn't leaving, so now they have to pay rent on, for this mortgage that they have because the person isn't, so many issues can come up here.
Yeah. And I think you said it too. Like so many people get into this because of the promises that they hear that it's like the passive income generator, but they don't have their personal finances put together. What makes you think like investing in this massive, this massive asset is going to suddenly make your finances better? Like my wife and I have talked about it a lot. Like we want to own rental real estate. And that's kind of the intention with what we were looking for in our first home, was like, we want to eventually turn it into a rental.
Yeah.
That meant finding a good deal and all the things associated with that. Our big thing though was like, all right, when we eventually turn that into a rental, obviously our personal finances are going to be in order, but that unit itself, you got to treat it as a business.
Yeah.
And every business needs its own emergency fund to handle things like this, so that you can weather if a tenant needs to be evicted and now you're out 6 months without collecting rent, or if you need to get a new roof. Now, obviously $50,000 just keeping off to the side, that's a lot of money, but you need to have room to at least weather some of this, because otherwise you end up in situations like this where 2 rental properties, both of them now are at a point where they're costing this person more money. Like at this point, I think you said it, like I would look into selling these and see, can I get out of this? This doesn't seem like it's the game for this person to play. Like this seems like it's too much hassle for what this person can handle.
Yeah. And even if they do take like a little bit of a loss or something from these, like I'm probably just selling them anyway, because it's the loss is worth it. It's your stupid tax that you're paying, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to deal with this anymore. Then you can take your extra money, and start putting it in the stock market and do what you wanted to do all along. Don't hang on to things just because you've already bought them and you feel like you're stuck in them. You can, if you want, wait till your tenant's lease is up and then sell them after that and just be done with it. Like you don't feel like you need to hold on to something. I've heard that a lot too. Like people in this situation, and then they're just like, what do we do with this rental property? And it's like, just sell it. It's going to sell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. It's not for you. And that's totally fine. You figured it out. You went through the process of being a landlord and you realize it's not for you. So just cut your losses and get out of this.
Yeah. And I feel like people might disagree with like, oh, we'll sell it even if it's at a loss, right? But I feel like you can kind of run a cost analysis and figure out like, all right, how many months have you gone without making a profit on at least one of these, right? This person already said that they're coming in at a loss every single month. How many more months are you going to like be at a loss, and what is that going to equal to on a yearly basis? You know, maybe every year you're burning $5,000-$10,000 just at a loss on this property. And then now with the next property, that person's going to be evicted. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of add up those costs and see like, all right, at a certain point, it would have been more worth it for me to just sell it for a $15,000-$20,000 loss than accumulating those losses over time. And then potentially even more if I make this decision later on in life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Nick, I think it takes a special person to be a landlord. I think you'd be a good landlord because you know how to fix things. You're getting that house all put together. So you know where everything is, you know how to fix it, and you have your finances together. So I think that's like a few of the most important things that you could possibly ever want for a rental, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I'm just organized.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like for me, like when I'm not organized, I get stressed out.
Yeah.
And like that, you know, the flip side of that is like I'm super particular about how I do things in all areas of my life. People who know me know that, like that I'm very particular about things. But like that's the only way I can stay like not stressed out when it comes to things like managing my finances or keeping track of whatever it is, right? It's just being very organized. And I feel like you said, it takes someone to be very organized, to be very on top of it, probably to have a few extra skills or at least know people who have these other skills to really take advantage of this scenario. But yeah, this person, they got to just cut their losses now before they lose even more money.
Yep. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.